Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. And now here's your host, the incomparable Voice of Doom. Okay, forgot the hat again. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to do a hard one. But I'm going to say a few things about, when things are quiet. What are you going to say, or what am I going to say at certain times? And believe me, when the nurse came in to see her, probably when we first got hospice, it's kind of like you're acknowledging that you're, terminal if you get hospice. But my wife wasn't like that. She wasn't going to admit anything. And then I'm like, we got to find out what the prognosis is. I think you want to know too. She's like, yeah. And I say, well, what's the prognosis, nurse? And she's like, 6 months at the most, which actually put a number on everything, which changed everything. Well, it really didn't change anything. It just kind of put a number on it. Hard to explain. It's just, first you think, well, it might happen in the future, but then it's only 6 months at the most. So, my wife was stoic. And then, a few hours later, which is her want to change course and change her attitude and change everything. To hell with that, nurse. I'm not dying. I'm going to live and I'm going to get better. And we'll, surly about it. So then you're like, okay, yeah, I know. We can do anything because, we have a practice that, we use to try to influence or use cause and effect to our benefit. And we may be idiots, but we know a little bit about causality and negative and positive forces in the universe that are vying with each other in everybody's life, and they have to deal with it. And I found out so much about how you can turn bad things. You don't turn them. It's good that they happened. You find out later. But there's those times when things get really, really bad, and she's in despair because she can't hardly get out of bed without being pulled, and everything's pain and sometimes crying, and that's the worst because the crying is hard to alleviate. That means that she really, can't help but cry. Not over her plight, but just pain. But that's the worst. Sometimes we'd be alone at night, and she'd be kind of awake because she'd been sleeping all day. And I'm like, oh, I'll read this Siddhartha book by Hermann Hesse because it's really a very artistic and beautiful book. And I was reading it to her, and I read it over a few nights, and then it hit too close to home because Siddhartha's, I don't know what you call, concubine or the person that had his son was dying, and I couldn't read it. But there's times when she kind of just says, I'm dying. And that's kind of when silence is golden. Because no matter what you say, you can say, I know, and then she's going to get mad. And she'll start a fight, and she'll deliberately jump out of bed and start it up with me. Or I could say, no, you're not. You'll be fine, knowing that she has growths under her armpit, an open sore, and an right arm that's about the size of a thigh, unusable. So, you'll be all right. You'll get better and we'll, go on. And then it's later on, sometimes it's like, I'm sorry I was such a whatever, fill in the blank, all these years. I'm sorry I wasted all these years being a, pain in the butt. never being happy. Every time we go on vacation, she ruins it. Every time we go on a honeymoon, she ruins it. Every time, she was a pain. We weren't meant to be together. The only reason we were together is because we met at a Buddhist meeting, and that was against all odds. And even us staying together, even going through the first date, was against all odds. And yet we had to get married to have these two kids, and I'm convinced of that because they've turned out to be really, really great people. And I know that was my mission. And if they have kids down the line who discover the cure to cancer, then that'll be my mission. That I had to have these kids. We had to go through a marriage that wasn't exactly Ozzie and Harriet or whoever they were. It was, you know, a lot of fighting and not many really good times because she wouldn't allow good times because she wanted to sabotage her relationship because she couldn't believe that she could actually have a good relationship. Because we all have our baggage, we all have our crap in our minds and why we, you know, act the way we do. I'm a saboteur, but I don't want to sabotage a romance because that's kind of fun. I mean, it's fun to go out and go to lunch and bring flowers, and I was very romantic at the beginning, and I think it was overwhelmingly romantic because I'd like to do things because I'd never really had a wife before, and I thought, it'd be nice to, give her a gift every day for 12 days of Christmas and something really nice at the end. Because, I'm a genius, and I know that would be romantic to 99% of the people on the planet, but she's in the 1%. And I was doing that, and I realized that she's feeling like it's too much. So, all my best ideas and intentions. And then it's, I want to die. That's one of the worst because now it's like, I'm going to die. It's like, I want to die. And that's not the good one because that means she's in such severe pain and realizes that her life is not, there's nothing left to do because she can't move her arms, she can't get out of bed, she's decaying. And that's another thing I realized when the doctor said get chemo, radiation, and a double mastectomy, and we were all aghast, and it's like, that's not going to happen. Well, I mean, it's crass, but you're going to get the double mastectomy one way or the other, and the incision may not be a clean one. And so, kind of go the conventional route. Things are getting better all the time, but don't think you're going to cure cancer with ginger juice and little remedies from a secret source. I can tell you firsthand, not going to happen. And as time went on, nurse would come in, change her bandage, and then it needed to be changed so often that I had to kind of help. And at first she could do it because her left arm was fine, and it was her right, yeah, it was her right side that needed the bandage, and her left arm was perfectly fine. Otherwise, I had to be feeding her on top of everything else. I hand her the bandage and the gauze and the petroleum bandage. While my back is kind of turned away. It's like getting a shot because I can't look. Because every time I get a glimpse of what she's doing, it's sickening. And it kind of smells, and I don't want to get graphic, but it's bad, it's sickening. But there came a day when even she couldn't do it herself, and then I had to do it. And when I saw what I saw, I got mad. I didn't get mad at her, but I kind of lost it because I'm like, how could you let yourself get to this condition? I was absolutely, and I'm not going to go into graphic detail, but just picture, well, no, don't even picture, just, you can get from the gist that it was bad. I was sickened. And the weeks go on until December, and I don't remember Thanksgiving that well. I think we had Thanksgiving dinner, which I bought in the store, kind of in the box, because then I could just give her the Thanksgiving dinner, which she wasn't going to eat much of. They wanted me to take her pulse all the time because of something. So I went out and bought a state-of-the-art pulse thing that you put on your finger, and you just put it on and you get your pulse immediately, and you get some other things too, I don't know, some heart rate or I don't know, whatever else thing. But we had to monitor her pulse, and I bought it. And caught up upon our anniversary, which happened to be December 12th, and I didn't even know it was my anniversary because we got married on one day and got the license on another. So our anniversary on the thing doesn't match the actual date. So everything was very confusing. I'll go into that later with the meaning of life. It's going to be down the line. I'm not going to do a saga for a while. December 12th, got up, went to the room to check on her, and her head was slumped in a way I've never seen it before. It was slumped like Jesus on the cross. And she was very still, and I was afraid again. And I went to Benj and I said, I think she's gone. And he's like, all right. The boy who cried wolf. And he gets up out of bed and he goes and checks, and he's like, I don't think she's breathing. And I said, well, here's the, pulse thing. And we put it on her finger, and it said nothing. Absolutely nothing. So suddenly, that morning was different than other mornings. Didn't have to get any food, didn't have to get any ice. And then I had to get Max out of his bedroom. He's not an early riser. And I told him, she's gone and it's over. And he was bewildered and flabbergasted because even though they got along like oil and water, from beginning of birth out the canal till the end, they didn't get along because he was a handful and she was a handful, and they were exactly alike, and they saw each other and didn't like each other. And he was flabbergasted and he was puzzled and he was like, I don't believe it, and just face that when I'm a kid. I mean, he's like a kid, and I'd hate to, I hate to face it now. My mom's still alive, and it's like, I don't even like the idea of her leaving at 82. But that was that. It's kind of the end of a certain part. We sat there. I called the nurse, and I said, should I call 911? And she's like, no, I'll just come down. It's going to be a couple hours before I can get down there. And I'm like, okay. And we just all three sat in the living room and kind of looked at each other like, well, should we plan a memorial or what should we do? And Benja's like, she wouldn't want that. And it was still, people were still paranoid and not really getting together. So, talked about it, but we were just like, I don't know, we were just kind of stunned sitting there, and we knew it was coming. We all knew it was coming. And yet, it was shocking because suddenly things have changed drastically. And I didn't know how drastically they would change until, I guess, part 2 of the saga starts, part whatever. It's like, it's a halfway. It's not going to be as long, the aftermath, but that's where I learned the most. I mean, I learned so much in the aftermath because I was on my own and I was free. I mean, I've never been free before. Never. Not really free. Like, I can do what I want. And I actually have money to do it. I could do what I want when I was 19 and I had $2 in my pocket. And, sleeping on people's floors or whatever. But I'm not going to get into detail because then I'll go on and on and on. That's just the end. She died on December 12th. And there's relief. and there's sadness, and there's regrets. I mean, she talked about all the things we could have done instead of her being such a you know what. And I would just say, we'll do better next time. And that was pretty comforting. I actually made her laugh. I mean, I actually made her laugh, which is rare. Because she's like, oh, I'm sorry I did all this. And I'm like, oh, don't worry, we'll do better next time. And then I'm like, oh, I'll probably be your dog next lifetime, and I'll be scampering around, trying to, my tongue hanging out, and I'll be scampering with my butt on the ground trying to please you, and you'll be yelling at me and telling me to go to my doghouse. And she actually laughed, which was nice, because my humor, no, she hates it. But anyway, that's it. I think I'm going to leave it here. I think I said enough. And thank you for listening and putting up with this. And I'll talk to you next time. It gets kind of interesting after this. Thanks, everybody.